welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of NomadLand. It's an honor to be here. Today we have another special guest. Before anything, I have my great co-host, the wonderful Erfan in the house.
In a good mood today.
I like
Funny, at least I think so.
And I have one of my best friends on the show today. I've only met her once. But we're Instagram best friends in a way.
Yeah, he did say that to me. He did say
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
It's just when you know somebody, you feel like you know somebody. You know, it's someone that I seek for advice in different realms, whether it's spirituality, talks about capitalism, talks about imperialism, talk about, what else do we talk about?
Just everything.
Energy, medicine. Yeah. She's been a validating force in my, for lack of a better word, awakening process, I'd say. So thank you for that. And it's an honor to have you on the show. And she will talk about some specific things along with some other fun stuff that we're all interested about. Feel free to talk about yourself and however you want to start with.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi Kang. Like Yaya said, it's been like an interesting journey. I think we met, quote unquote I don't know, maybe like more than 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
But it's been like I call him like my ghost best friend.
You guys like meet on Instagram first or no?
Instagram, and then I think we met at
the community healing center.
Yeah. But it's just like one of those things where I just feel like we've known each other forever, you know. So it's deep, you know. I guess that's like what millennial.
Yeah.
You know.
Which is fascinating to me. I feel like Erfan is probably going to love you in a lot of similar ways too, you know, just because, you know, we're so close. So we share a lot of similar things. So it's only right for that to also be there.
Exactly. I friend of a friend, you know, it's a friend.
Exactly. So we'll either find that about on the show or I'll be proved wrong. And it'll make up for a better show if I'll be proved wrong, though.
Well, because she said she feels like she's known you forever. I was gonna be like, I used to think I know him, but and then you said something nice about me.
I should Gemini, nice you know, I got the different side. You think you know somebody and you get the flip. Yeah. But I guess, as far as introductions go, so I am an activist. I'm a community organizer with a progressive grassroots organization called Revolution LA. And so we're grassroots, so we're locally based, all volunteers. So, you know, none of us get paid for what we do. I don't think I've ever really met an activist that gets paid for what they do. But yeah, it's a big part of my life. We've been working on a few different campaigns these past few years, starting with Divestment that happened out of Standing Rock as a result of what happened in Standing Rock of, you know, these big banks basically funding these destructive industries. And then from there, you know, because we were able to push with Divestment, that was a movement that was happening across the nation. Our next phase was public banking. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, which is what I wanted to, you know, talk a little bit about.
Nice. I'm excited to talk about that.
What do you think is the most important thing? Because first we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to dive into different areas. And if you want to move the chair a little bit, I think it'll be fine. So you could be centered in front of it. I don't want you to tilt your head.
Okay.
Yeah, just be in your full divinity.
There you go. Okay, cool.
Cool. We good?
Yeah.
All right.
Just paranoid because the last time.
Basically, right now we want to target public banking and why that matters, why it's important, why people should know about that, right?
So I'll start from the beginning on how public banking started, just to kind of give you guys like a good perspective on it. Because, you know, before I got involved in the movement, you know, I really didn't give a shit about banks. I didn't really give a shit about any of them. I just knew that banks were evil, but I had to use one. You know, and we need it in our society. If you have a society that has money, a bank, you need it. It's absolutely necessary. So from the beginning, you know, Divestment, Divest LA, which is, I guess you can say Revolution LA. My organization was the one who had spearheaded the movement here in Los Angeles.
How long ago was this?
This was in February 2016, and that happened.
So fairly recent.
Yeah, pretty recent. And so that happened because of what happened in Standing Rock. And so because of the big banks are the ones who are directly funding the Dakota Access Pipeline as well as all the other major fossil fuel industries, a divestment movement was born. And so we were really inspired by Seattle. They were the first city in the nation that divested as a city, collectively as a city, voted to divest, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it was $8 billion from Wells Fargo and cut their ties with Wells Fargo as a result of them funding the Dakota Access Pipeline. And so, we saw, okay, well, if Seattle can do it, why can't Los Angeles do it? Los Angeles is the second biggest city in the nation and also one of the most powerful economies in the entire world.
Definitely, yeah.
And so we got together, and the divestment movement was born, and it was just like a ragtag group of just normal citizens like you and me, and we were hitting City Hall pretty much on a weekly basis and trying to convince the city council members that we need to divest and cut our ties with Wells Fargo, which is the major bank that Los Angeles banks with.
Shit, that's my bank.
Yeah. And so, in Wells Fargo, they have a really long, bad history of doing really, really shitty things.
Exactly.
It goes from fraud to predatory loaning, attacking communities of color specifically, and also funding, pretty much every destructive industry that you can think about in the world. Private prisons, child prisons, fossil fuel industry, and the list goes on and on. And so because of that, we needed to, as a city, not fund these destructive industries, because if you're banking with these institutions, you're indirectly funding them because these private banks are for-profit banks. So that's one of the big differences between a public bank and a private bank, is that private banks are for profit, and it's in the interests of the shareholders, which are usually really, 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 really wealthy people who do not care about anyone or anything except themselves.
Yeah, it goes 100% maximize their profit and
and their annual bonuses.
No one gets anything from that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were spending as a city over $100 million just in fees to bank with them. And that's going towards things that we don't care about, things that we don't want to support and fund, and we can use that $100 million to actually improve our city, green energy systems or better schools, better roads, solving the homelessness crisis, and so that's why we were making these relationships with the city council members, going to them and demanding that they cut the ties. And so we were hitting hard with them for pretty much all of 2016, and then 2017. Excuse me, my timeline's kind of a little wonky right now. But so yeah, we were doing that for about a year, and finally they passed a resolution to end their ties with Wells Fargo. And so our divestment campaign was successful, and we were able to get the city to divest, I think close to about $8 billion as well.
How much of this movement derived from the Occupy Wall Street movement that was going on?
They're pretty linked in a way. I was actually part of the Occupy movement myself, very loosely. I had just graduated from high school about this time. And I've always, around that time, I was already kind of politically activated in a way, because I had a high school teacher named Mr. Ho in my AP Environmental Science class, who was totally anti-capitalist, anti-big money and politics, and he was the one who's kind of sparked that
spark in you,
put that spark in me, and kind of activated me. Mm-hmm. And so when the Occupy movement was happening, that's when, as a nation, it became a nationwide topic about what these big banks were doing and how corrupt Wall Street was. Because Occupy LA came as a result of Occupy Wall Street. Exactly. But the problem with Occupy LA was it was just a lot of this visceral, angry energy from people that just wasn't being channeled anywhere. It was just anger and no solutions, and just, and ultimately that's what, made it fail.
Or allowed for another movement to pick up where they left off.
Exactly. And so that energy just kind of
redirected itself.
And then divestment became something that kind of
Do
channeled
you think
out of that.
leadership has something to do with this, like compared to Occupy? Not really. It was just.
Well, the thing about Occupy was that there was like no leadership. That was kind of
Yeah.
like one of the main things was like, no one's a leader, we're all equal. And so since there was no organization, that was also part of its undoing was there was really no structure behind it.
And that's one of the things that I've at least observed. You like things to be effective. You're looking to actually make a difference, not just to talk it. And I could see how you become part of something that has a set agenda, right?
Exactly.
And what are those agendas? What is those things that they wanted? What was the aim?
Well, for Occupy LA, it was mainly, divestment was kind
What
of
was on the list?
on the list for Occupy. Well, it
No,
was,
for you guys.
Oh, for
Yeah.
us. Well, we have a 13-point agenda, Revolution LA. We have a 13-point agenda, which is human rights based. And so I'm not going to, I don't need to go into like all the 13 points. I don't think I can remember all of them off the top of my head either right now.
But what are the main ones?
Forgive me. But the main ones, we target macro issues, is getting big money out of politics, which is huge, 100% renewable energy in Los Angeles, as well as divestment. So we took the 13-point agenda and kind of made it a little bit smaller. And then so that's the 3 points that we are focusing on right now. But, the 13 points, it's pretty much based on a lot of like the socialist framework. So a lot of inspiration from like the Zapatistas as well as the Black Panthers and other, revolutionary leftist movements and organizations.
And what made you guys think it's going to work?
Well, because we wanted to target big macro issues. And so it was really ambitious as an organization for us to have these big things of like these big, huge societal issues. But if we work on a grassroots level, on a local level, it can be accomplished. And that you can see from the success of the divestment movement that not only LA was successful with, but, San Francisco was also successful, New York, Philadelphia. There's a lot of other cities that were on board with this and they were successful because they were working on a small scale.
So can you walk us through some of the successes you think LA has had for the divestment, aside from, you said, like Wells Fargo and...
Well, so that was one. So divestment, and then another one that I think was really awesome off the top of my head was Indigenous Peoples Day getting passed. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for activists hitting City Hall and demanding change and really honestly touching the hearts of these city council members. They're politicians, but at the end of the day, they're humans. They have families to feed, and most of them, but they got hearts somewhere in there. And once you're able to touch on them as a human level and get them to understand outside of like their little bubbles, you can really effectively create good relationships with them.
And it does seem like
make them
people on the
understand.
city level are much more willing to hear you out as opposed to the national level.
Yeah, if you're on the national level, you gotta got money to talk to them.
So that's where the corruption really
That's where the
lies.
corruption is because so much of our political system, our government is directly tied to money. All these big politicians are being funded, in the interests of these corporations. And that's how we have a lot of the laws that we have today protecting these corporations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but certain things, definitely, things that need to be monitored federally, or it needs to be on that scale. But I think in general, things that are community-based are more effective, when it comes to helping people,
Yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
You see the people face-to-face, and you're there, you're in it together. And it's true that people of a community, they're more aligned and think alike than other communities a lot of times, So that's why it's like there's these little nuances in different communities that might not match and might not work together. But when it's on a local level, I think it's a lot more effective.
More effective and it's easier
So-
to reach.
Not to let's say in a 10-year program, what are the things that you think could actually be practical and help the people of LA?
So as far as like, just organizing on like that local level, getting involved with different groups, there's so many different organizations, here in LA that are doing a lot of good, awesome changes. We Revolution LA, we work in coalition with, a lot of other progressive groups who are also fighting for the same thing, for environmental rights, for, social justice rights, homelessness, women's rights, we can only do so much, so we need to work together as a team, and we have to, collectively bring our energies together and do that. protesting is one way. I'm not super into doing that anymore, just because I feel like you can channel a lot of that energy into actual like more practical solutions. And so that's what, I really appreciate about my group is that we're all very, like practical people who just want to actually
Transmute that energy
into things that are actual tangible instead of like screaming into the ethers of like why the system's fucked up,
Right.
Yeah.
It's stepping outside of for lack of a better word, and I don't want to judge it, but it does seem like somewhat some of a victim mentality when you're not really doing anything about it outside of just shouting about it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, do you feel like it's more, the things that you're doing is more practical and it's going to help in the sense of human rights in that avenue? Or are you doing things that are like physically with schools or like finances, bettering neighborhoods and stuff like that too?
So the divestment campaign happened, which was kind of like, trying to revolutionize the financial industry and just revolutionize pretty much every asset that's connected to the banking,
Right.
which is, pretty much every asset of society.
And that put a chink in their armor.
Yeah.
So then you guys thought what?
Well, after that, we thought, okay, well, we can't bank, we can't stop from one bank with Wells Fargo and then go from another bad bank. They're all pretty much bad. And so
Where are you
that's where
gonna
the
put that
solution.
money?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where the solution of the public banking system happened. So other than the public banking stuff, that's been our main focus as a group. We also are on the board with this really amazing organization called Urban Partners LA that's been around for almost 30 years in the inner city near the Koreatown neighborhood. And they've been giving out free groceries. It's called the Groceries for Our Neighbors program every Saturday for the past 20 years. And they give out about 300 bags of groceries to the community there every Saturday.
How do they choose the people? Like who gets
It's just people who live in the area.
so they know like kind of.
Yeah, and you kind of can check and stuff like their IDs and things, and mainly it's just a bunch of like little grandmas and grandpas and little families, mainly like people of color, and then so they've been doing that for about 20 something years, and then there's also a tutoring program for kids as well every Saturday. So the groceries program is from 8 to 10 every Saturday morning. And then from 10 to 12, they have the free tutoring programs for the kids
That's
in the
awesome.
basement of the First Unitarian Church.
Public banking. So then once you guys put a chink in the armor, you realize what are we going to do with that money? Then you think about public banking.
So that was the solution. And public banking, it used to be, we're not the ones who came up with this idea. It was like a fringe concept for a long time by this woman, Ellen Brown. She was like she's like the mama of the public banking movement. But because of everything that was like Standing Rock really put like a spotlight on the corruption of big banks, I would say. That's when like really people, throughout the world really, understood that this was something really bad and that we can't accept this. Right. And so that's where the public banking idea came about. And
like North Dakota's like been doing it for over a century?
Yeah, so they're just about to hit their 100th year anniversary. Started in 1919 in North Dakota.
That's right, actually, just about a century.
Yeah, and so, that's just an example that it's a system that works. And, when the 2008 recession and the economic collapse happened, they were cool. They were fine. When the rest of the country was shambling, they were fine because they had a public banking system in place.
Like budget surpluses and everything's balanced, and it's really strange.
Now, North Dakota is a conservative state?
I would say, yeah, it's pretty conservative. Mm-hmm.
And this is more of a liberal idea?
Definitely very liberal, definitely
so
on
would
like
you
the
say that in a
left-wing
weird
spectrum.
way they came together?
In a very strange way, that's why it's kind of like the ironic thing about this is that we were pushing for divestment that happened at a Standing Rock that was in North Dakota, and then but the North Dakota is the one that has the only public bank in the nation, so it's a little ironic in that sense, and so there's some problems associated with the Bank of North Dakota. It's an awesome system that they have in place, but there's a lot of things that they have flaws, and so that's why we had come together. As the Public Bank LA team, and they kind of like tweaked it and fixed it up so it's actually an ethically chartered bank. Like it's actually in the print, like it's in the the creation of it for it to be ethical.
So who's going to be in charge of the money once it comes? Is it going to be pretty much government run? Like, what are we talking about? Who's going to be in charge of money after, assuming that we do move to public banking?
So it would be in charge of the people, essentially. I mean, there's going to be basically people that are help running it. So essentially, like one of the big differences is that with a public bank, bankers are going to be public servants. And that's like a really like crazy far out idea here in America. Bankers, when you think about bankers, you think about like Wall Street people, like, rolling in dough, super, like living that kind of lifestyle. And with a public banking system, they're people who are working for the best interests of the people. And so, the first phase of a public bank, basically the main purpose of it is for it to start, like, it's going to hold the money as a city, the money that the city generates and the money that the city has. And through the funds that are being generated from that, we can use that for things that are actually good for, the community. And so that some of that can be like, supporting green infrastructure and green energy systems, better schools, affordable housing.
But don't some people say that, you want less government because the government isn't doing things right to begin with? Now we're going to trust our money with them. I mean, I can hear how some people could say that, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
Well, see, that was exactly what I thought in the beginning. When, our team kind of came up with this idea in the beginning, I was kind of like, what? Like, I don't know about this. I kind of had the same like suspicions, basically of like not trusting the government in that sense. And, but the thing is that if it's ethically chartered, then the government doesn't have that room for corruption because it's created in the best interest of the people. And so that's why it's really important as citizens, as people, to exercise our power, exercise our right, and to, not allow this corruption to take place. And if it does, be vocal about it. And so, but it's a very different system because with a private bank, it's privately owned and they're serving the best interests of the people who are, the stockholders, essentially. They don't, as regular citizens, we have zero say with that. And that's really the biggest problem that I see in our government is that corporations and our government are so tied together. Mm-hmm. But you need to separate that and allow the government to be autonomous in its.
It's fascinating how it hasn't happened before, right? Because the banks have been raping us in so many different ways for so long, and for us to think that that's reality,
well, you know
it's
what
almost
it is?
weird.
It's like when it's like the same all across the board, and you don't see any other options. You know what I mean? It's like the same thing as like, let's say, television, cable TV before the internet came around, like Netflix and all that stuff, right? Like that's all you see, that's all you know,
right?
And people, realistically, the majority of people are too busy working and to even like give this stuff a thought.
Right.
Right?
It's such a dominant discourse
that
just you don't even want to question it. You're like, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
But they're responsible for recessions. I mean, what else are they doing, right? Like they're taking all the resources.
Yeah, taking all the resources. Funding wars. Exactly.
Guns.
Like guns, the military-industrial complex, child prisons, regular prisons. These detention centers, fracking, oil drilling. The list can really go on and on.
We could save all that money essentially and use it in a way that truly serves what we want.
Exactly.
And it's so important because we always want to make a change, but the only way you can really make a change in this matrix is with money, right? But we're not after finding out ways to like work that money. Essentially, this could be the answer to that. Am I right? Or
exactly.
right.
I think there's also something to, obviously, the money, a lot of it goes to stockholders, people who invest in the banks, and there's also the bankers themselves, and the people who work for them, smaller bankers who say like, make more money for me, you make more money. But I think there's also something to be said about the motivation of the greed that people have that makes them kind of capitalism. Like there's a reason it works, because I think it gives people a motivation and they have incentive to kind of be more active and find the best investment and what makes the most amount of money, which a lot of times is fucked up things, like we just mentioned. But at the same time, if you go too far towards the socialist side, sometimes it's just laziness and the people have less incentive, and sometimes the wheel stops turning. So I mean, you kind of like have to keep that balance.
That's an interesting point, though, and like I've argued with people on this show about that to some extent, but no one's ever like been able to say it to me better than Heidi did. which made me question my views on capitalism to some extent. My ego is not fully to let go on that yet, but
It's hard. I mean, it's so ingrained.
it
in
is
our culture.
because, and because sometimes you're like, just people want to be lazy and they want to have handouts. They don't want to have a dream. They want, But what I realized essentially after talking to you, and you said it in the kindest way, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something along the lines of, it's at someone's expense that we have this capitalism. And essentially, it may not even be people in America. We're essentially fucking others for us to have our capitalism. And that doesn't sit right in my book.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're just so blinded by that because as Americans, we live pretty comfortably compared to so much of the rest of the world.
But it's such a fucking cognitive dissonance. It's
But that's
Yeah.
what I'm
fuck,
saying. Like, there has
you
to
know?
be some kind of balance somewhere,
Yeah.
for it to work. Because there's a lot of examples of the extreme other side around the world too that's not working. So I mean, it's difficult.
I mean, that's why I'm just a big proponent of just the paradigm shift that's happening as we speak in so many other assets, not only on like a physical level of what's happening with our earth, like how our earth is actually changing from climate change, but also on like a societal level, a cultural level, a spiritual level. There's a big shift in energy that's happening right now. And right now as humans, we have the choice. We're given the choice of like, okay, we can either keep going with the way that we've been doing and just keep fucking up more, or we can really change things. And that's what the revolution's all about is fundamental, like radical change. And so that's what public banking is. It's a radical idea, but it's not radical in the sense of like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like, whoa,
Not at all, no.
so new, that's so different from what we've been taught that banks can do and that what society is able to do, and it's possible. It's so possible. Like we can actually really do it. And so with the creation of a public bank, I mean that banks run everything. That's money. Our world is dominated. It's ran by money, unfortunately. And until that somehow changes, which I don't really think is going to happen anytime soon.
Well, we're planting the seed.
we're
You are
planting-
planting
yeah.
the seeds. What am I?
Yeah.
We are.
We're gonna make a change.
Thanks to NomadLand
Yeah.
podcast.
Sponsored by.
Let's slowly.
You guys could donate. No, I think public banking is like it could. I love to see it in practice in LA. See what happens. I think it's
Yeah.
practical and it makes sense. It just again, who's running it, the checks and balances, and all those things, and it could be great things. And it kind of sucks. There's not that much information. Like pretty much every single video on the internet is just like about North Dakota. It's like not that much stuff out there. Yeah.
How much of that has to do with banks lobbying and wanting this to not come back?
Oh,
have you
that's a
experienced
huge part of it.
resistance? Do you have any good gossip?
We've had some resistance before. I mean, before I think that with the Public Bank LA team, like we were just, it's a small group, it's really not so many of us, and didn't really face so much resistance other than, so like the LA Times came out with an article basically that was talking about not to vote yes on B, which was the charter amendment that for the first time in the nation's history that public banking was on the ballot. So this happened in November 2018, just passed. Unfortunately, it didn't go through because honestly, I think that people just weren't really aware of it. But we received almost 50%. It received almost 50% of a little bit less than 50% of the majority vote, which was still huge. And so that just kind of lit that fire under our ass. And now we're working as a coalition with different cities in California because it needs to pass on a statewide basis anyways. And now it became a nationwide conversation. But yeah, going back to the LA Times, this guy who's like one of the chief like staff writers of the LA Times came out with this article saying that it was bullshit and that we don't know what we're talking about.
Like a hit piece.
Yeah, basically saying it's just like hippies and these just like radical lefties or whatever that they were trying to say about us, and just saying that it was just a bunk idea, that there was no research behind it, that it was just, it's impossible. But there's been so much work, involved with this, really intelligent experts, lawyers, banking experts, people who used to work with these big banks who have been on the team, like really like working it out. I'm not part of this, like that stuff is so complicated for me, and it's like a whole different language. It takes a panel of experts to really like kink it out. And so we had that team, but
That's where we come in.
and then that's where you guys come in and like push it through. But yeah, so they were just calling us, saying it was bullshit and stuff, and then that kind of hurt us a lot because a lot of people read the LA Times, and they're gonna make their opinions and their votes based on what they hear. And so that was one of the big oppositions that we had.
But the movement keeps going.
But the movement keeps going. You got to be fearless, Like Wall Street definitely has had a bit of a target on us.
And let's slowly shift gears. But and if you have any questions, ask. But I want you to kind of bring it home on this topic as well.
Sure.
And if you have any questions, please ask too.
Yeah, it's about Wall Street. Go ahead. It's kind of related to what she was saying.
Well, so I guess what I really want to get people to know is that this public banking is a movement that's happening, that it's going to happen, and that I just want people to become excited about this, that there's actually like a solution to, creating big fundamental change in our society. I think that's something really exciting to think about and to talk about and just to be more aware about. And, even though Charter Amendment B didn't pass in LA, another resolution just passed within City Council, because now most of City Council, they're on board, because not only do they see it as like this is the ethical and right thing to do, but it also saves the city a bunch of money, So it hits like all the things, and it's a solution that really benefits every single person. You can be from the 1% to like the very poorest of the poor. It literally
changes everyone's lives
in a good way. So why won't you be, a part of it? And so they just passed AB 857 within City Council. And so that means that they're signing up on board that LA City Council is supporting of public banking. And so on the 8th, we're going to go to Sacramento and do some lobbying over there and just basically trying to ignite this fire within California and then eventually the nation that, is just going to keep happening. And then once all the cities and all the states hop on board with this, boom, next thing you know, like we just revolutionized the entire financial industry of the United States of America. Mm-hmm.
So how much would Wall Street have to pay you to sabotage the movement from within? No, I'm kidding. But
we can talk about that once the cameras are off. No, I'm kidding.
Because I know some people. No, but when you said we didn't get the votes in LA, but do you know if there was a decent amount of votes? Like, do we?
Yeah, it was like a little bit less than 50%.
Okay,
so
it's pretty
we were
close.
pretty close. We got really close, which was
that means
still
like next round. I mean,
successful.
It's kind of like the weed movement, right? First time it didn't pass, a few years it didn't pass, and all of a sudden now.
Exactly. It's just a persistence, It's just a persistence. You got to keep going.
But it's interesting because it's gonna help people like save money, make more money, live better. It's like interest for everyone. I feel like
the weed movement or this. Because you love to eat more than the other one. But yeah,
that's awesome. Anything else you'd like to say about this?
I mean, I guess that's pretty much about it. I think I kind of like covered, how it began and why it's important and what's happening right now. And I just want to get people excited about this conversation.
It is definitely exciting. Yeah,
it sounds really boring, but when you just kind of like frame it like like this and really see what it's about, I get excited about it.
Yeah, I think when you see the big picture of like where a lot of money is going to, and if you change the system where that money could get poured into, like into our communities, schools, roads, all that stuff. Like, it sounds funny, but with LA, I always like imagine like it's such a rich city, right? So much money, and it's very unique as far as a lot of times, a lot of cities, a lot of towns that they have one or two industries, right? That kind of have control over the economy. Local economy in LA is huge. There's so many different factors involved with it, from the Port of Long Beach, from Hollywood, industries, factories. There's a lot of like fashion. There's a lot of stuff, right? But I'm like, why are the streets so fucked up? Why are the schools so fucked? It's just always like, I mean, there's a lot more than that to it, and it's on a lot of stuff. It's on a state level, but it just doesn't make sense,
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and so that's with like the public banking. We're not seeking to change the system, it's creating an entirely new system.
Yeah.
We're not trying to change the system within the system. The system's broken on purpose. So we can't keep trying to fix something that's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah. Our government is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, of being oppressive, of, sucking out resources from the earth. It was built like this. And so we can't keep attacking that and expecting it to change in that way. We have to completely transform it and create something new from the ground up.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
On that local grassroots
Now,
level.
speaking of Earth resources, Erfan wants to do Bufo, and he doesn't know where to go.
Okay.
What can, what,
And then totally flips.
I know where I want to go. I just don't know where to get the bufo.
Well, I know a couple.
hold on. You got to work your way.
Okay,
Now we're
so-
there. Now we're
okay.
going to go ahead and
He
talk
always
about
wants to
that
work
realm.
his way through things. I just wanted to just
That's
get it.
quite the jump from public banking to Bufo ceremony.
I know it's gonna be like,
Let's go there.
you know. Why do you want to ease into it all the time?
Okay, so I guess I want to start with what are your intentions with working with Bufo? What do you know about it, and why do you
Take down Wall Street.
take down?
No,
You know?
you know what? Take my glasses off for this one. I'm just
get
interested in it.
vulnerable.
You know, I've seen a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people, and personally, I've seen a lot of interviews with people who've done different types of, maybe I don't want to say similar, but you know, different psychedelics like medicine, ayahuasca, Bufo, DMT, and I've never seen anybody who's had like did it and regretted it. You know, in one way or another, I feel like it benefited their life, and it made them a better person as a human being, and I'm just interested in it. You know, like the things that I hear from people who've done it, what they say, it intrigues me to see what kind of effect it would have on me, you know? Yeah. And even on an egotistic level, I've seen a lot of people who I feel like, you know, I feel fucked up saying it, but I'm just going to keep it real, but like low, like not very high intelligence who've done it, and it's benefited their lives in some ways that I feel like, for me, I'm a writer, I do music, and I feel like it would benefit me in that sense, and it would make it easier for me to go where I want to be, like mentally, spiritually, you know, like, you know, easier access to it.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. I've worked with Bufo several times, mainly, really only with one of my good friends and old roommate, Rodrigo. And so he's based in Mexico right now because of, you know, some stuff that happened over here. He's not allowed to come back,
Cartel,
bless
El
his
Chapo.
soul. But, you
He's the
know...
one that gave Nima his thing too. He's the one that did.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that guy a lot.
Yeah, so
from
he's
Nima.
a medicine man, you know, like...
She's friends with Fabian too.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, Bufo is really intense, for sure. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things, like 1 second you're here and...
Gone, right? That's
why
why like rocket.
gone.
Right?
Like not even like any like recollection of your body pretty much. You just return straight to source, essentially. And, you know, it's not, in my experience and just from a lot of other people's experience that I've talked to Bufo about, it's not really the most psychedelic experience as far as visuals go, but it's very, like, for me, it was always a lot of like feeling and energy and like knowing.
Yeah.
You know?
See, that's why I'm not after the psychedelic. I'm not trying to see visuals
Yeah.
and trip out. Like, you know, I'm not that. Yeah. So that's why, again, one more thing that intrigued me about Bufo is because they said like DMT. Okay, let me ask you a question. Would you say it's better to do like DMT first, and then go into Bufo, or just?
You know, I don't.
It's kind of a hard question.
I'm not really sure if there's any right or wrong way to go about it.
Or would it be too hardcore to go straight into Bufo, or not necessarily?
No, I don't think it would be too hardcore. It
Not
would
for
just,
you.
you know,
Okay,
it
you're
might
good.
be a little confusing at some points just because it's so much that it really takes a lot to digest. Like after you're just kind of like, you come back and you're like, whoa, what the fuck happened? You know, like, like I've had some pretty intense.
How many times have you done it, Heidi?
I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but more than several times.
Bunch.
And was
Yeah.
there ever a time that you did it and you're like, holy shit, I'm not gonna do that again?
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
You know, but it was like kind of like not like, oh, holy shit, I'm never gonna do it again. It was just kind of more like, whoa, like what the fuck happened? And then like you're like, oh, people saw that. Like I basically, long story short, I did it after Combo by the river, and a couple other people were doing it. Everyone seemed like they had like a pretty peaceful, very beautiful, blissful experience. I was talking to this other woman who had done it before, and she was like, oh my God, it's like the most like beautiful thing, like so peaceful. And I was like, oh, okay,
like,
cool.
"Ah."
Like after Combo, like, yeah, I'm totally about that. You know, I'm all like cleaned out and stuff. And so I was one of the last people who did it. And man, I basically went through like every spectrum of human emotions that you can possibly think about, like from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low. And it was really painful, like not physically, but emotionally. It was like very painful and really sad because I experienced a lot of deep sadness, which looking back now, I
That
felt
you
like
needed to feel it.
that
right?
I needed to feel because I felt like I was feeling the earth's pain and like with the pain of
The Earth's
humanity, basically. And I
So
felt
not
like
personal. It's kind of more like on a grand
but
scale.
in this way, it is personal because we're all connected.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, but
yeah.
I had to understand and like really feel that pain in order for me to understand like the depths of like
Yeah.
what I'm here to do.
No, but what I mean is like it wasn't like something about your childhood. It was just like a more grand scale, and you feel it inside you as well, right?
Well, that
Not like-
happened. So yeah, so that on the first time I did it was like on like a more grand scale things, and I guess I was like screaming and like
That's
like,
that was my next
wailing
question.
around.
So when if the people who aren't doing it around you, what do you look like? Are
I
you
mean,
doing crazy shit? In
You know,
general?
that was me the first time. I kind of like, I guess, yeah, I was releasing a lot of energy and I was like yelling and wailing and crying and like moving around and stuff. I have no recollection of this. I don't remember doing any of this. But then other times, a lot of the other times I've seen people, they're just totally blissed out and they're just like
Interesting.
sit still. You know, afterwards I've been able to have similar experiences like that where it's just been very peaceful and very beautiful and very open. So it really depends on the person because I mean I've seen like exorcisms happen with Bufo as well. And
Right.
That's something that
Is that
can happen.
Is that how you? And if it's not okay to bring this up, I'll delete it. Okay. But the thing that you had with your mother and your relationship with your mother, was that with Bufo or was it with something else?
So
Because that's one of the best stories I've ever heard.
wait, can you remind me a little bit about because that's a lot of things, and so I want to just know specifically what.
The one that later on your mom verified that did happen because your aunt talked to you.
Okay, so yeah, so
Was that Bufo?
So I,
And tell Arif.
you know, I'm not exactly sure if it was the Bufo that might have helped me realize that. Well, in a sense, yes, because so basically what Yaya is referring to is that when I was born, my mom had a really rough labor with me. And so they had to do an emergency C-section to pull me out basically because I just wasn't coming out. And when I was born, the doctors and like my auntie, they presented myself to my mom as like a newborn and she rejected me. Because she was in like a lot of pain and it was just like the postpartum depression and she was like, no, I don't want to see her like she's ugly, you know, like she was like saying all this stuff from, you know, her being suffered. And so like my first interaction with my mother was of rejection, you know? And so I didn't hear the story until like maybe I was like in my early 20s and I was like, whoa, you know, and that made a lot of sense because growing up I did always have like some kind of like conflict with my mom, you know, and my mom's like such a really sweet, beautiful, really, really, really sweet person, like literally like the kind of person that you would never hurt a fly, you know, just genuinely very kind. But I would always have this conflict with her, and it's still something that I'm honestly working on in a way, like not on, like we don't fight or anything, but sometimes I feel like I can, you know, be a little bit nicer to her in the sense, you know, especially when she's like trying to show me love and, you know, and it's just like, like mom, like
What is that? That's not just you though.
you know, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's yeah, and it kind of makes me feel like a fucked up person,
Yeah.
you know.
I don't know what is that.
You know,
I
but
think I've
it's-
talked to you about that before. like say, you might call me with an annoying phone call, right, for 15 minutes, and like I'm just gonna like hang in there, not say anything, you know. But if my mom calls about something, it's just like dragging on. I'm just like, fuck, like Jesus, fuck. When is this phone call gonna end? Like I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and then I feel so guilty about it after, right?
Exactly.
Like, what is
exactly,
that? Like, you know?
Exactly. So you know, yeah.
Like Arash could call me, we talk for 2 hours. You know,
Yeah.
mom is like been like 7 minutes. I'm looking at the time, and then yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Triggers. So
So with the Bufo, I mean, that was kind of more like my own personal
so
realization.
you were able to kind of navigate through that experience, huh? Like that childhood experience and kind of
Yeah.
like resolve that, or in a sense, how did you work that out with plant medicine?
Well, the important thing was that I had that realization, and then it made me reflect on who I am as a person, and you know how that affects my relationships, just in general, just like the fear of rejection, just like the pain, and just like that experience that I've held on to. and just doing that inner work, like not even necessarily with the plant medicines, but just like sitting with that and just every day working a little bit to, you know, be better and just be mindful of that. And then with like the bufo, one time I had this, the medicine brought me back to the moment where I first experienced shame, like the emotion of shame.
The actual memory of it?
I didn't have an actual memory. It was kind of like I went back and I remember like it was like a emotional kind of thing. And I just remember like I was very little and it was like something like I think my aunt or something did, but I just had this like knowing. It was like this knowing that like I was little and I was shamed for crying. And I felt the experience of what shame means. And then once I had that realization, that shame was attached to crying. And so, you know, me as a, you know, if we're going to get pretty personal, I've had issues with like crying in front of people and even just like crying in general. Like was kind of like really difficult for me. Like I always kind of like growing up, I felt like I had to kind of like be tough in a lot of ways, you know, and just kind of like try to prove myself a little bit too much in my masculine sometimes. And so peyote was actually the one that really helped me get over that. And with the peyote ceremony, I was at my third ceremony in a teepee ceremony in Gilroy by the Bay Area, and that was the first time I ever cried in front of people. Like, and it was quiet, you know, like I was just like by the fire and I was just like, you know, someone was talking about their moms and it just made me really emotional and I just started just bawling in tears.
In front of people.
In front of people, you know, quietly, like no one, you know, it was like the ceremony was going on and stuff and it was like towards the end and, you know, a lot of people were emotional, but I just had to cry. And I was kind of like trying to cover myself. I had like this little like feather fan. I was like, like, you know, like I don't hope no one's looking at me. But then afterwards, I had a few people come up and was like, "Hey, sister, I saw you crying, you know, by the fire, and it was so beautiful. Like, thank you for being strong." And like, you know, there was like people coming up to me. They were like, "I saw that, and it was beautiful and real, and like, thank you." And that made me feel like, wow, like it's okay to.
It's interesting. Like I never like I don't cry in front of people, or like it just like it doesn't happen. I don't need to, but I don't know why people. I don't think it's bad at all. Like I would not have a problem with it crying in front of people. You know.
Yeah, I think more people should, especially men. Especially men.
I think crying
real
is really
men
good.
Cry.
Seriously, like I just. I don't know. I don't know. I think I love it.
It's part of the body's wisdom. It's the same way we shit out. The same thing. Our ears get shit out. Same thing. We get things out of our nose. Our eyes also gets rid of the trauma through that. I think it's the wisdom of the body.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of the body. It purges
Exactly.
itself out and it keeps itself healthy.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, like especially like in the past year, I've just feel so open and like connected to a lot of things, and things affect me. And it's like it's usually a good. It's never like a. Even when I feel like crying and I get emotional, it's not like a sad thing, you know. It's more like I feel connected to someone else. It's like usually through someone else's emotion, you know.
Right.
And
Empathy.
that what triggers me, and I just feel like
Connected.
Yeah, that empathy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, one can probably do that better after they connect with themselves. So that's probably the stage now you're at, where you're connecting with others after you've been able to connect with yourself.
yeah, writing's definitely been a huge part of that, you know.
That's true. That is
Yeah.
true. So you said peyote was also something that was very helpful to your journey. And how's that experience? I don't know much about
Hold
that.
on, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We'll
Talk about when we're gonna do bufo later.
Okay. Well, with the peyote, that's been like the main medicine that I've been working with. I would really say like the peyote path has been it's my way of life now. You know, I went to my first ceremony September 2017. Had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was just invited to come. I show up. It's in this like little shack in Topanga, and then I had a really beautiful experience. It was just very peaceful, and I was just like very present. Looking back at it now is like totally like untraditional, like the way they did everything. There was no fire, there was no teepee, there was no nothing. It was so like untraditional, right? But I had a great experience, and I befriended the guy who was running it, And then he invited me out to go to Mexico that same year in December. I went over to ceremony there. And then from then on, it just became like this huge like presence in my life where I'm not even like it was just like peyote, like take the wheel, and I'm just like in the back seat, and it's just like been taking me for a ride, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's come on really intense, but it's transformed like every asset, like every facet of my life, of who I am, my relationship with my family, my friends, just, you know, ignited more of my creativity also. And it's the path that I walk now. I would say that's like my way of life, you know, just the Red Road teachings of the indigenous teachings of the Native Americans, you know, with Sweat Lodge, with the peyote. And then, you know, I'm planning on going to my first Sundance ceremony to support that this year as well. Uwipi. And, you know, it just, it just is something that I consider the way that I live my life now. Everything else is revolved around
So
ceremony.
interesting. It's even with psychedelics, like, I don't want to say if it's your favorite, but we've talked to a lot of people on this show, and usually people have one that is their go-to, you know? It's their favorite. And to me, I've done mushrooms. I've kind of done acid. And so they're all alien to me, so to me it's interesting. Like, why is it that she likes peyote, and like that guy likes acid, and someone likes like ayahuasca, someone likes pufa? Just got to try all of them.
Yeah. I mean,
Find
I've
out.
definitely been there. I mean, I've pretty much tried everything under the sun, you know, some things, not so good things also, like in the past before when I was like not awakened, I guess. But for as far as like this, you know,
I can guess.
Sure, you already know where I'm getting with that. But you
So-
know, all these plants have spirits. All these medicines have different spirits, and sometimes it's like, you know, with like people too. Sometimes you just resonate and vibe with one person more than other person, right? So it's kind of like that. The way that I see it, like I see peyote as like my grandpa, and they do call it like a grandfather spirit. And it's been guiding me. Sometimes it's really scorned me for like a lot of the, you know, like for, you know, like, hey, you're kind of fucking up in this. Like you can do better in this, you know. So it helped me have a lot of self-realizations, but it also showed me a lot of beautiful things too. All of it, you know, even like the ugly parts are beautiful.
Yeah, you said something when you first time you did it in Topanga. It was, I forgot the word you used, but it wasn't the traditional or the you know. How important do you think that is to do these psychedelics in the right setting or in the traditional way, or, you know?
It's absolutely essential. You know, to me, I can't even think about taking psychedelics without some type of intention or some type of ceremony. You know, like it doesn't need to be so, like, you know, like all these rules and stuff. Like with peyote, for the most part, there's definitely a lot of traditions. You know, there's the tradition of the Native American Church, which has been around for a few hundred years now, which, you know, there's like a protocol and like a way you do things.
Native American Church.
Yeah, the Native American Church, the NAC, and then there's also...
But it's a native religion?
Yeah, so it's
not
an
actual, like,
intertribal
church.
Intertribal religion, you know, spirituality. You know, it's not so dogmatic as
So nothing
like,
to do with Christianity.
yeah,
is
nothing
what
to do with
wanna
Christianity.
Clarify it for the
none
audience.
of that. But
Well, it's important because for them to be able to do what they do, for it to become that. So, right?
yeah, so they had to kind of like, oh, it's a church. We're going to church, you know. So like the white people, they can, oh, okay, they're just natives.
Says
They're
the
just,
church.
let's leave them
Yeah.
alone, and you know, like they're
It's
praying
like the
to Jesus
Scientology
and
that you
stuff.
go to.
They're gonna go
You
to
know.
hell anyway.
What the colonizers say.
Ever
right?
since you
Yeah.
become clear, he doesn't go to Scientology, guys.
Okay.
You missed the joke, and we're still going with it.
Yeah, I was thinking about the previous conversation. That's
But yeah,
super
the
cool.
spirituality, you know, there's like rules, I guess you can say, protocols, just because there has to be some structure, or else there would be chaos, you know. And it helped. Like that's the thing. It really helped me out with like going to these ceremonies, is like that discipline and structure, because I've always been such a free spirit, rebellious, kind of like maverick type of person. Like I hate rules. You know, I hate getting trapped in a box. I hate being told what to do. I hate that kind of stuff. But this taught me discipline. This taught me like sacrifice and like for the greater good.
The ceremonies.
Ceremonies has
Interesting.
really helped me like be more responsible in like a lot of aspects of my life and like be okay with like following traditions and like understanding the importance of keeping
That's
traditions.
interesting because I like discipline, you know, and that's probably one of the reasons I don't take that route too much, possibly like the shamanic route. I prefer like the yogic route, you know, just sit there, meditate, don't move.
And
I-
they have the rules too, right?
Right.
With, like the yoga. Yeah.
and I love that, you know, that's one of the things I truly love. Has it set you back in any shape or form?
No, I don't really think it set me back. It's definitely steered the course of my life in a bit of a different direction. But I feel like just looking back on everything now, like I meant to live my life this way. And I feel like, you know, there's a saying that they say around these ceremonies is that, you know, when you come to this ceremony, if you're here, it's because you had an ancestor, you know, somewhere way back that prayed for you to be there, to prayed for you to learn this, you know.
You know what I find frustrating just about like not even like just psychedelics and medicine, but even with like let's say like a fucked up drug like coke, right? There's people I feel like more and more people are learning about medicine and their effects, but still a lot of people like in publicly, if you say you do coke like once a month, they'll be like, oh my god, like they might like judge you hardcore, but they're on antidepressants like, you know, every day, like 3 times a day. And I feel like that's so weird that people, when something's prescribed by a doctor, still the majority of people think that's okay and it's not a drug. Like even have stuff like that with my mom, with like let's say the doctor gave something for a knee for pain, you know, and in her head she thinks that's okay, even though it's like fucking up her liver, doing all these things. But if she finds out, let's say I smoked weed, she would just be like so worried for me like all day, you know, like something bad happened. And I wish like there was a way to raise more awareness to that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's happening now, right? A lot.
Literally
Yeah.
everything is a dominant discourse. The same way we talked about banking, you know, it's just such a dominant thing that it's almost, you don't question it.
Yeah.
That becomes a dominant discourse. That's why one of my favorite things is wherever any realm I step into, I'm like, okay, who's in power, who's in charge, and what are they saying, and what is the rules that they have? Because chances are they set what the norm is. And if you're anything
Yeah.
but that, you're in the wrong. So that's where we get our emotions. That's where shame comes from. That's where guilt comes from. And it's important and healthy to be able to question those things.
Yeah, man, fam. There's people who take Adderall every fucking day.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
legal
And then
meth.
like when they and they hear
Literally
someone like
meth.
did like you know Molly or someone did like coke, they feel like, oh, that person's a druggie, and they're fucking like cracked out all day on
Yeah.
Adderall. Yeah.
That's true. And I mean, like the pharmaceutical industry, they're like one of the leading causes of death in America, you know, because it's like you take one pill to fix one thing and then that causes all these other problems. And then like next thing you know, you're on like 5-6 different medications. And it's like, you know, and like, yeah, like you said, like fucking up your liver, like everything.
Yeah, you can take Advil every day. You fucking like, you know, you die. Yeah. Like, you know, it's gonna fuck up your liver. But people don't know that.
So being around the natives and now feeling connection to some sort with them, are you picking up on a lot of their ancestral pain?
I feel like in a way, yeah, definitely.
Because that's tough.
Because it's a lot of the empathy. I mean, with Standing Rock, with what happened in Standing Rock, you know, that was one of the things that, you know, not only just for myself, but as like as a society of the world, especially in the United States, like it put that light onto the struggle of Native Americans and everything that they've endured and suffered, and that they're still going through as a people. You know, colonization has not stopped, all because, you know, now we have like these cars and like you know, they're on reservations, and you know, like everyone's kind of all mixed together, you know, and it's like, you know, but it still hasn't stopped because these oppressive systems are still in place. They're just disguised a little bit better, you know. And then we got like the, you know, the TVs and the music and all these things to distract us. You know, we can't really see it as much, but it's still happening. And before, you know, with Native peoples, you know, they were just fighting for themselves. You know, with like the American Indian movement that happened, you know, they would, you know, they worked with some other groups, but like natives, they needed to focus on themselves and fight for themselves, you know, in that same movement, like during like the 60s, for example, when all of that was happening. Black Panthers, the Black Power movement, it was like, you know, we as Black people, we need to focus on that and like help empower our people. And then like the Brown Berets and like the Chicano movement also. So it was like different pockets of like these, you know, people of color that have been oppressed for so long coming together and trying to solve their own problems. And now there's still that, which I think is important for people to come collectively, like, and do that. But now there's more of that sharing going on of like, let's mutually empower and help each other. But yeah, with the ancestral pain, going back to that, absolutely, just hearing stories from people of like friends who lived or live on the reservations and like talk about the things that they've endured and they've seen. It touches me and it hurts me, and seeing that and seeing just the entire history, like getting like really schooled on that, has made me more aware of just the colonial history of the United States, and just also worldwide. It doesn't just stop at the United States. It's like colonialism. It's like a parasite that's infected the entire earth. But it has helped me really reconnect with like my own ancestry. For sure. Like ceremonies really help me feel the presence of my ancestors. I'm Korean. I was born here in the United States, but, my parents are from there. I speak Korean. I grew up, not super like traditional, like my mom was like she's not like those typical like Asian parents, she let me and my brother have a lot of freedom.
She doesn't have the hun.
The Han for sure, the pain of like just Han basically is like a concept that's very unique to Koreans. It doesn't have like a specific meaning in English as in like as a word, but it basically is like ancestral pain of like injustice.
I always perceived it as spontaneous rage.
Yes, rage also,
like lashing out.
It can manifest like that. It can manifest in anger.
And the Japanese have a lot to do with that?
They do, just because Japan has tried to like rule and conquer Korea for probably like a long time, and also China has been doing the same.
I know you guys are right in the middle, so just
and we're like a tiny little like country, between these two massive powers.
Yeah.
And so all of the history of Korea was like, just getting bullied.
Every time one of them's in a bad mood, fuck it. This is fucking.
That's why Koreans are super nationalistic.
Just take him. I fucking love their barbecue. Just fucking go get it.
But at what cost of the barbecue came, But yeah, it's definitely been something I've explored and also been healing, like with the ceremonies, healing for my ancestors, praying for my ancestors. With the peyote ceremony, like it's a little bit different than like, let's take for example, like ayahuasca ceremonies, like ayahuasca, it's a lot of like that inner work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And, same with the peyote, but with the peyote, it's like, I would describe it like ayahuasca is like very astral, and it takes you like, into the cosmos, like into all these different multi-dimensions inside and outside of yourself, right?
You're talking about ayahuasca now.
Yeah, that's
right?
like ayahuasca and DMT. With peyote, it's very grounding. So it's not super psychedelic. It can be for sure. I've had, some ceremonies where it was like super strong with the visuals, but that's not the purpose. It's kind of subtle in a lot of ways, and it helps you connect with the elements. It helps you connect with your inner knowing, helps you connect with your ancestors. And, when people ask me about like, so it's like, what's up with the peyote ceremonies? Like, what do you do? Like, what am I supposed to do? I always just say, you just go sit there, you eat the medicine, and you pray.
Who's the
DJ? You pray, you pray, essentially, And I grew up non-religious. Like I'm probably one of the only.
This is a rare thing, right?
Very rare.
South Korean, by the way.
Yeah, I'm South Korean. Super rare, in the States. Like pretty much, I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why. When Koreans come to the United States, they all just like become Christian or Catholic.
They become Christian here.
A lot of them, yeah.
Interesting. Because I noticed that they're very like they're very Christian mostly, and it was always interesting to me like. Did it have something to do with colonialism?
It's a lot with
like
just
in
like
Korea, the Korean War. Because I don't know much about the history, right? So I'm just like assuming things. I'm like, how did that happen? Like,
I think a lot of them, though, and correct me if I'm wrong. At least in my little experience of Korean people that run religious businesses is essentially as a business.
Yeah, that's a big
Is
part
it? They're
of
like televangelists. Like,
I don't know why I like Korean people. I've told you that before. I know like some random facts about them, and it's like I'm like, why do they like? They're hustlers, the ones that are running these religious businesses.
yeah, and
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah.
anybody running any business, any country,
That
they're
is
fucking
true.
hustlers.
That is
right?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's definitely
Okay.
true. And it's like the
That just
community. You know, it's like you immigrate and you're like, okay, where are all the other Korean people at? Like, hey, I need like help like getting a job, you know, and then that's where the church comes in. It's like you get to meet other Koreans that speak the language, they'll help you with the jobs and like
And then they give you the bowl.
and then they give you the bowl and then next
Pass
thing
it
you know,
around.
they're like,
it
okay, all
coming.
right, cool. So all right, cool, Jesus. All right, cool, we're gonna do this now, you know? So yeah, but my mom, like that's funny that you say that, Yaya, about like the business aspect of it, because that was like I remember my mom telling me that as a little kid,
That's
and that
amazing.
was what
I
made
like your
me
mom.
turn off to religion, you know? And I was like I guess like an atheist. I called myself an atheist agnostic for a really long time because my mom put this bad taste in my mouth about the church, because she was like, you know, we had this family friend that, you know, we would sometimes hang out with because they were like one of the only other Korean kids in the neighborhood, and their grandfather was a pastor. And so one time she like sat me down and she's like, hey, so like look at that family, you know, like don't you think it's weird that, you know, the grandpa's a pastor, but they have like 3 homes and that they don't pay taxes on.
That's the
and
fucking crazy
they
thing.
drive
Yeah.
these luxury cars. And what's up with the flat screen TVs in the church? Like, aren't you supposed
Your
to
mom
just
would
go?
be saying that?
Yeah, she was saying this to me. I remember
That's amazing.
so
right?
vividly.
That's dope.
And she was like, Heidi, like you need to know that going to church doesn't make you a good person. You know, you already know how to be a good person. Just follow that. You know, you don't need it to have other people telling you how to be good, because, you know, it's going to get to your head. Like, look at that family, you know, like they think that they're doing so much good because they're a pastor and they go to church every Sunday, but they don't donate to the poor. They're just taking all that money for themselves. What are they really doing with that? What kind of church is that?
And it's always amazing. Like 2 things. My problem's never generally not with the religion itself, but it's just the people. Because it's the same thing. Any country, any religion, it's always the same, right? They fucking come and like the people controlling the religion. It's about the money. And I'm always like people who go to the church or the mosque or the temple or whatever. Don't they see it? Like, I don't know. It doesn't affect them, you know? Because they still, some of them with these, like, let's say even the televangelists, like, who is this guy in Texas? I forget his name. He has like private jets, all this stuff, and it's all like tax free.
Like the mega church.
Yeah, his
is,
mansion. You have to like fly with drones over it to see it. Like it's so big, right? But people know it. But then they worship them. They love them. They give them all their money. You know, it's like it's crazy. These people like mail in money. You know, well, one of these churches, it was like they were like they would mail people $1. The people like to their followers, right? They're like, it's $1 for you. Mail us $20 back, and you'll get it back tenfold in life. Like some crazy shit. And people like just like fucking mailing in the $20 bills like that.
It's all going directly to Jesus, by the way.
Yeah.
You know.
That guy that walked the earth with no shoes, he needs fucking money from you guys.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I think Jesus is freaking awesome.
That's
you know,
what I'm saying.
You know, I
Yeah.
think like Christianity, you know, like Islam, like all, you know, every like Hinduism, all the major religions of the world, you know, they all are fundamentally, I think they're good. They want to teach good things. They're trying to teach values of like treating people with respect, you know, like the way that you want to be treated. Essentially, that's pretty much what they're all talking about, right? But it's like you said, it's like the people that just ruin
That's
it.
what I'm saying. Every single one, like the Buddha, he was even born rich, and they decided to like, you know,
Put all that
leave
away.
that and like walk
Yeah.
the earth. Jesus, they're all like shepherds and stuff like that. But right now, like the Pope is like, you know, doing that, and like we got that our situation in Iran, and we got the televangelists doing their thing. Everybody's milking the game.
I wonder why that is.
I think it's because it's touching on something that's so like intrinsic as humans. Like we want to have a connection to God. We want to have a connection to people. We want to like do good, and we want to hear good things, you know, and we want to feel that spiritual connection because we're all spiritual people, you know, but you
Having
know,
faith makes things easier. That's for sure. You
Exactly.
have something to lean on. Like just like okay,
Yeah.
God is great.
you know, it's beautiful to believe in something. It's beautiful to have faith. And,
Yeah.
You know, like you know, touching back onto the ceremonies, you know, before I went to ceremony, like peyote ceremonies, like I didn't know how to pray. Honestly, I really didn't know. That was like a pretty foreign concept to me. I didn't really learn how to do that. You know, growing up, like quick little background, you know, like both sides of my family come from like very Buddhist backgrounds. And then in my mom, I grew up just with like my mom and my auntie. So my father wasn't in the picture, so I don't really know him or his side too well. But growing up, we just did, Korean like ceremony, like little ritual things, which is just ancestor worship, and like very tied to shamanism. That's like the indigenous religion of Korea. But other than that, I didn't, we didn't, my mom wasn't a Buddhist or anything.
The shamanism? It's
Yeah.
like,
So
it's not Buddhism?
they're very closely linked, but Buddhism came from India, and then it became like a very big presence in Korea. And it's
So
still,
they kind of like mix, kind of like some traditions from shamanism, then Buddhism mix.
so they were like, they both basically kind of worked in harmony, and that's a lot of like the Koreans in Korea right now. Like it's very like tied together, but like predating Buddhism, predating any other religion or spiritual practice, shamanism was that. And the shamans are mainly women, and they're, the high priestesses, the doctors, like the medicine people of the communities, the healers of the communities. And, essentially it's the belief that everything has a spirit. And as humans, we need to do ceremonies to thank the spirits and to communicate with them. And the shamans are just like the mediums, like the main mediums of like the different spirits and stuff.
Are shamans rich in Korea? Are they balling?
I mean, some of them too. That's a problem too. It's like once, like capitalism. Once that came in the picture, it's like
Once the path is there are people who will take that path.
There's people who are gonna try to corrupt that. Yeah, it's like with all major religions, all spiritual, things, all because you're working with medicines. That doesn't, you're not all of a sudden like a holy magical person, like there's a lot of room for, I see it here in LA with my own eyes, not trying to name names or anything, or but I've seen it with my own eyes of like that corruption kind of taking place, of like the money becoming the driving factor of like why people are doing a lot of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that happens with just about anything once you put money in it, right?
Everything corrupt. Once man touch it.
And, like, don't get me wrong. I think that people should be compensated for their services, just because we live in a society where we do need money. If someone's like serving medicine, it's like their gas, it's their time, it's like the materials and resources and things. Like, yeah, people should be fairly compensated when they do, but I've seen it literally like people as a business, like, oh, okay, well, it's like this ceremony, this ayahuasca ceremony is like $250. Oh, if you can't afford it, well, too bad.
Yeah.
And it's just like, sometimes it's crazy expensive. Like I've seen ceremonies people are doing for like almost $1,000.
It's crazy. I guess it's across the board all over the world, right? I mean, with any religion, anything like that, there's opportunity to make money. I think society itself, like if it's capitalist, it has an effect on that, or like being materialistic, but it exists everywhere. But yeah, like that stuff's surprising to me. When people like have to pay so much for into religions or ceremonies, and
yeah, it's kind of like exploits it,
Yeah.
And you're exploiting people's vulnerabilities, and I think that's like the really fucked up part about it is that like, people are coming to ceremonies, people are trying to go to church, because they need healing, they need help. And so that makes people really vulnerable and like easy to manipulate.
Exactly. What better place to put your money, right?
There is a lot of different ways of looking at it. While that reality is true, I wonder if there's other realities that hold just as strong. Maybe sometimes people, that's just where they collectively are, and that's what they need to do in order to feel whatever they need to feel. And one way or another, they're going to go ahead and commit to that. That's
To something, right?
Yeah. So it's like, even if it wasn't capitalism, even if it wasn't a shady shaman or a priest, they would have.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's across the board everywhere, but I could see like,
it's like for us to think that maybe like we've fully evolved and everything is a choice. Sometimes I wonder about that. Maybe it's just we have to act stupid. We just have to act stupid. And that's probably one way or another.
Yeah, that's how we learn. That's how we get that awareness, right?
Right, because if the realization was there to begin with, maybe the act wouldn't even be there, right? Your mom was already way ahead of the curve in that sense. There's no shaman that could have been like, pay me $1,000 and let me have you know what I mean? She was just there.
Yeah.
And some people, they're like, hey, come and get this for free. And they're like, no, I don't trust it. It's like, there's a reason why it's free. And it's that same thing goes with love. Sometimes you just have so much love for people and you want to give it to people. And you notice that they're projecting their things onto you. And they're like, whoa, why is this person so loving? That doesn't make sense. Or like, they just put their own fears onto you. So it's like it works, I think, in a lot of different ways in that
Absolutely,
sense.
yeah.
So I think it's important to like have awareness to those type of people and I don't know, just speak with compassion with them. So hopefully that could be the difference that they need to experience in order to do the change. Anything else?
No,
Yeah.
I think I got a lot out of this episode.
Did you like Heidi?
I was hogging the mic.
You like Heidi?
I do. I love her.
Cool.
She's
I
dope.
like you guys
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Thanks for
for
having
sure.
me.
I like you. You like me?
But let me tell you something. I'm sick and tired of guests coming on this show. It's been a year and a half. Promising different psychedelics to me.
Okay.
When they're on the show, I got you, bro. I got you, bro. Then like never again. Then I'm like on to the next guest asking the same question. So what is it like?
Real reason why
Okay.
I'm here. Well, I mean, do you need like names? Like, do you need like addresses? Like, what do you need?
No, but like the real talk, I'm just like I'm truly interested in like experiencing a ceremony.
She's been promising me to take me to a sweat lodge for the past 3 months, and
Yeah.
you know, so
I haven't
don't
even
have
been
your
going-
hopes.
I haven't even been going. Okay.
Yeah.
And little breaks and stuff. But I promise.
yeah.
Let's
I
go through her
promise-
Instagram and see if that's the case. I'm kidding. Where do you see yourself?
In 20 years.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself with this work that you're doing? Like, is there a goal, or you're just going to be in that whole be here now mode?
With like the medicines?
The medicine, the public banking, your ambition, your passion for social justice, your love for all the things that you talked about.
Well, I mean, just to put it simply, I realize that as a person, as a soul, my life is dedicated to service in whatever facet that may be, service to God, service to my family, my community. And however that's going to be, I feel like it's always going to be constantly changing. It's always going to be constantly evolving. Right now, I'm, helping with the public banking movement, and then also the things that, as an activist of what I'm trying to support, and then with the medicines, just being in service to the medicine, I'm involved in a circle here in California, in the Southern California area, the Mazatlán fireplace. And, I was taken on, to help support, like we just had a 2-day ceremony out in Joshua Tree last week. I was able to actually bring my little brother, which was awesome. And the whole time, I was cooking food, and I do things like that.
Take me, I'll help you guys.
Just, of being of service, and using this path to heal myself, continuously heal myself. Now I brought my brother on, so he brought a lot of healing to him. Hopefully that's going to magnify and help heal our family. And, introducing other people to this way of life, and just, taking the teachings of what I'm learning from these ceremonies. Because it's kind of like a spiritual, like, tune-up, like we live our lives, we work our everyday things, like I'm a normal person, I have a job, I have, I do normal stuff too, but these ceremonies, it's like a tune-up, we're like a car. Sometimes we need to go in, we need to get these little parts fixed, we need to get our oil changed and things. And so that's kind of how I see it. These ceremonies bring us back into balance. It kind of helps clear us out.
And you're not, just to piggyback off what you initially said, you're not financially, that's not a goal of yours. It's not a thing that
No.
moves you at all.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been paid for any of this.
That's when it keeps it the
know.
most pure, right? I feel in some ways.
What is it
Yeah.
with you? Like you just that you don't.
I mean, it just, well, as far as like the ceremonies and the medicine, I mean, it's brought so much to my life that I just want to keep being like a guardian and help support it as like a guardian of walking this path in a good way, of taking, really what it boils it down to is that I want to take the teachings from what it teaches me and apply it to my everyday life so I can improve my everyday life, and in doing so help try to improve the lives of other people.
That's beautiful.
And I've had the beautiful opportunities of working with a couple different elders. Another a Wirarica elder from Mexico. I was able to help him come to California and support that. And we asked for a donation for some of these ceremonies just to cover some costs and things. But there's like always like a bigger vision picture behind it. And working with this elder Modesto, who's native from the Wirarica tribe, they've been eating and, you know, praying with the peyote for thousands of years. You know, they're called the last guardians of the peyote, essentially. Other people, you know, they're more commonly referred to as like the Huichol tribe. But that's like not the right name for them. That's like what the Spanish gave them. And right now, with what's happening, you know, they have a sacred mountain, their most sacred place called Viricuta in Mexico, which is along the Sierra Madre Mountains. And it's under attack. It's under threat because there's these mining corporations, like silver and gold mining corporations, that are trying to go in there and extract the gold. And so that's part of Modesto's mission, and a lot of other peyote people's mission is to help protect and guard and keep Viricuta from not being exploited. And so that was like one of the purposes of Modesto coming out here and him running ceremonies, is to gather these funds to help protect the land. And so that's another, like, I guess, yeah, big picture vision. And in a way, yeah, we need some money to help fund that, you know, for people to go there, for us to like buy land.
It's quite selfless in general. Like overall, it's very selfless.
Yeah, you know, because it's for, you know, the greater good of humanity. You know, that's just how I see, you know, we're all connected, you know, and once you have that realization, anything that happens to others, it's also happening to you.
And you see you come across a lot of different types of people in this line of work, I'm sure. A lot of great people. And do you come across some that you question their intentions, and how do you navigate through that judgment?
I do, you know, I try to be as like, you know, open-minded as a person. I think I'm pretty non-judgmental as a person. But, you know, sometimes if I see it through actions, for example, where I can like, you know, I saw that, you know, so, you know, I can't, I feel like I can't really do too much about it, you know, like unless I have an actual conversation with that person where I can try to bring it up, you know, but, you know, I just have to worry. I just have to focus on the way that I'm living my life. I'm focused on how I'm walking.
It's beautiful. You just take it back to yourself and look within.
Yeah. And then to use it as a way of like teaching me like what not to do, or maybe it's something like, oh shit, man, I do that sometimes. You know, like it you know, it can be so many different things. But
allow it to serve as your mirror.
Yeah.
On the low, I think she's holding a record of some sort. What's the hour? Are we over like an hour and a half?
Are we really?
My phone died.
Oh my god! Okay, sorry.
No, not sorry. That's a good thing. That means like, you know, we didn't.
Just went on.
We didn't get bored, and we want to keep continuing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but
time just flew
one
by.
comment on that. Just again, my personal thing. It bothers me more when someone's like not genuine. Let's say if someone's like trying to sell me some shit in downtown LA, or if they're a real estate agent. I'm like, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, he's a hustler. He's trying to sell me something. He's a salesperson. But like, when it's in the conscious community, or when it's like charity, when it's like a religious leader type, you know, priest type, it really bothers me a lot more, you know, because they come in the cover of something else, you know. And as a salesperson, is a fucking salesperson, right? But when someone comes in the cover in the uniform of something else, that they're trying to represent something else, but that they're not, like, it really bugs me. Just wanted to give my 2 cents.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Sucks.
All right. Any? Do you want to add anything to that? Or?
No. You know, well, I just feel like with it's a beautiful thing that I'm seeing, that with like consciousness becoming something that's becoming mainstream in some ways. But then, like you said, it's kind of like not cool.
I'm afraid
at
of
the same
that.
time.
I don't want it to be a cool thing,
you
like
know?
punk or like.
It can't be a fad. It just can't be something that's coming and going like fads do. Because if you're gonna be about it, like, you guys gotta be about it. You know, like spirituality, you know, consciousness is not just like the cool in thing, even though it is kind of like the cool in thing right now. But no, it's like it's just the thing. You know, it's just it.
Should be beyond the rainbow filters.
Yeah, it's beyond fads. It's beyond what's cool. It's just.
But is everybody on their own journey though?
You know, everyone's on their own journey. You know, but as a collective, we're also all kind of on a journey as well, right? As like a species, as like, you know, bodies of consciousness or whatever. So, you know, that's why we just got to be focused on the way that we do our thing. And, you know, if you see it, you know, try to call it out. I try to, in the best of my abilities, in a good, compassionate way.
Compassion,
yeah,
gentleness.
You know, not just like, hey,
I think be a good example and call it out when it's necessary. It's good.
Yeah, so in a way that like makes people like really hear it and like really listen, you know, because then if you're just like, pointing fingers. Like no one likes being just called out. And a lot of the times from my experience, when people do that, no one really, really wants to change. Sometimes it fuels that into
You get the
them
guards
keep,
up and do
keep
that.
doing
Yeah,
what they're
for sure.
doing, So it's tricky for sure,
I mean, on that note, Nemo should have been here today, and he's not.
Oh, I was wondering.
You're
like, if he was
familiar
gonna
with
be
him,
here.
right?
Yeah.
What do you think? He is a fraud, right?
Totally. No. I think he's a great guy.
What part of the journey is he on?
So he's gonna be watching
On the
this,
fun
right?
part. He's on the fun part.
He's okay. He's the punching bag.
I think I don't know. I don't know Nima too well, but from what I've met with him,
Dark aura.
He's I just see a demon in his eyes. No. I think he's very sweet.
Lost, huh?
Very sweet.
on the surface. On the surface.
No, but we all have shit. Like
Draw it back to Nemo.
everyone.
But he has more. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
We're all in the process.
He's very sweet, but please continue. Like, be honest. What do you think of Nemo?
I think that he's just finding himself. I think he's exactly where he needs to be in his journey.
As we all are.
Yeah.
He's like a sweet lemon, He's sweet, but he leaves a bitter taste. I can't wait to
He's
see
making
this.
some like music. You got a cool dog. I only know him through like Instagram.
Me too.
That just the filter of what the Instagram shows.
Yeah. That's funny.
Shout
All
out
right.
to Nemo.
Yeah.
Shout out to Navi, our great producer. We appreciate him. And thank you for listening to us, Erfi.
No, I think I love this episode.
Thank you.
I got a lot out of it.
Thank you.
Hopefully you all
it was
did
a lot
too.
of fun. I was
Yeah.
kind of nervous a little bit in the beginning. I was like, oh, I hope I just like,
I think you did great.
No.
like,
You're built for
We'll
this.
definitely have you back on, to continue.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to.
I think we're lucky to have you as one of the first things you're doing in this regard. I'm sure you're going to do a lot more of this.
Yeah,
Aw,
for sure.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I mean, I love it. It was awesome conversating with you guys. I feel like it was just like bam, bam.
For sure.
It's a lot of fun.
We're doing the
Yeah.
Persian
Very
goodbye thing
enlightening.
now. We're going to say goodbye for 10
The
minutes.
Persian says goodbye takes so long. Maybe Koreans are the same
Bye.
way.
No, we're the same.
I don't know,
you know?
conversation
Kiss
starts.
like 3 times and start talking again. Anyway.
Okay, bye for real. Conversation.
Everybody make sure to subscribe and Nomad out.
Thank you for listening.
Cool. Thank you guys.